Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our country has to offer, especially health care. Across every state, every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
As a chef, I know flavor doesn't begin in the kitchen. It begins on the land. And West Home's nature-led Australian Wagyu is a story written in the landscape of Northern Australia. Cooking is storytelling, and West Home Wagyu carries a story of Northern Australia itself. Raw, powerful, and deeply authentic. It's a testament to the passion and care raised in the rhythm of Northern Australia. I'm Chef Maylin from 88 Club in Los Angeles, and I invite you to visit westhome.com/Maylin to learn more and taste a story only West Home nature-led Australian Wagyu can tell. That's westhome.com/MEILIN.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Good morning. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, before I introduce our special guest, I just want to tell you, the President gave a State of the Union for 2 hours. I don't want to hear anyone ever tell a rabbi or a rev the sermon was too long. Can't do that anymore.
Fact check. It was an hour and 57 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, okay.
Yeah. And one of the things we've learned over the years is nobody ever complains a sermon is too short. That's never happened in my lifetime anyway. I want to go to the conference line now and speak to someone whom I've come to know and admire for many years. I know her family. Hindi Pukpko, Senior Vice President of UJA-Federation, doing great work, not only in New York, but around the world. And recently she was involved in the introduction of a bill at City Council. Hindi, you there with us?
Wonderful to be here. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Reverend.
Okay. I like the order. That sequence sounds good to me.
The Reverend Rabbi. You lost. Overall, you lost.
Yeah. Okay. So, Hindi, explain to us. We know there are a lot of protests in New York. Why this bill at this time?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to talk about it. So, part of what makes New York great is that we're a lively bunch. And protesting is a part of being American. It's a part of being the city. But what we saw a few months ago at Park East Synagogue is an example of a protest getting out of control. I know, Rabbi Potasnik, you've seen some of the images and the footage, but not all your listeners have. But really what took place outside of Park East is what we're trying to prevent from ever happening again, which is that families and young children were harassed and intimidated on their way walking into their house of worship, which happened to be Park East Synagogue at the time. And what we're really asking for, and what Julie Menon is asking her council colleagues to do, is approve a bill to ensure that that kind of harassment and intimidation does not occur directly in front of schools or houses of worship.
Wow.
It's amazing. I'm thinking about what we've seen in the last 25 years when it comes to houses of worship that used to be sacred space, safe spaces. And we've seen violent intrusions into houses of worship over the last 25 years and people being killed, literally. Synagogues, Christian churches as well, and mosques. And here we have to codify protection of these houses of worship because society has lost that level of respect and reverence. Where
absolutely
it doesn't make us look good, as a society.
Absolutely. And I think what members of the public may not appreciate is that for members of all faith communities, their houses of worship are not just places they go to pray. right? They are their sanctuaries in every sense of the word. People mourn there. They celebrate life's milestones there. They teach their children there. So much happens in those buildings. And we believe that every New Yorker deserves to feel safe in those spaces.
What is the argument against the bill?
That's a great question.
I just, I look at the polls and the majority of people of all different faiths support it. So what's the argument to counter the passage?
So there is broad-based support. The bill right now has over 32 co-sponsors in the city council. Over 70% of New York City residents support it. So there is a lot of support for the bill. There is a small sort of fringe opposition to it. And frankly, Rabbi, I think it's mostly because they are misunderstanding the bill and its intent. So they are incorrectly framing it as sort of an attempt to stifle free speech and stifle protests, but that is not at all the case. In New York City, you are not allowed to stop a protest. A protest has the right to take place. We are simply asking that intimidating protests do not occur directly in front of the entranceway into houses of worship. Michael Gerber, who's the general counsel for the NYPD, testified quite beautifully at the city council hearing earlier this week, where he stated very clearly that protesters have a right to sight and sound. They will continue to have that right. NYPD will just ensure that they are not obstructing the entrance to a house of worship.
There was question as to the distance. At one point, I heard 25 feet, then I heard 50 feet, then I heard 100 feet. And now it seems to have landed in the hands of NYPD's discretion. Is that where it is right now, that NYPD is determining?
Yeah, so some of the back and forth around the feet definitely felt like a Talmudic argument at times, and with people having different rationales for the number of feet. I think Michael Gerber made quite a compelling case that's based in real world, the reality, right? So police get to the scene. They know there's going to be a counter protest. They need the flexibility to actually look, not with a measuring tape, but with their own eyes.
Right.
And think about, based on how the building is, where the door is, where can they put the protest to uphold two sacred values at the same time? The right to protest and the right to assemble and the right to practice our religion. And NYPD has the ability to uphold all of those values at the same time, but they need the flexibility with respect to distance, depending on the realities on the ground.
And what the positive news here is in New York, and I think in many other places around the country, is the close relationship, working relationship that houses of worship have with police. I mean,
absolutely.
Right? They're in constant communication about different things where they feel that may be a threat. I remember attending, Josh Davidson's wonderful rabbi, Temple Emmanuel, called me once and said, I want you to come to our Hanukkah celebration. It's going to be outdoors, but you're going to see a number of police there. I said, I've come to learn to live with that. He said, but we received a threat from one of the groups, I think it was Westboro Baptist Church, that they were going to come and try to interrupt a Hanukkah lighting. You want to talk about something that's non-controversial, right? So when you think of that, if that needs protection, all the more so, when you have a service or you have a program going on, some people feel there's a need to just be there and interrupt and interfere, and we're not going to allow that to happen. So, Hindi, I got to commend you. You really spearheaded this effort. You brought people together.
Well, I will say we are very blessed to have Speaker Menon as a Speaker of the City Council. And what was most inspiring, Reverend, about the hearing on Wednesday is that it really felt like New York. There were Black ministers and Catholic priests and Buddhist monks. I mean, you name it. Most faiths in the city were represented that day. And you heard really gut-wrenching testimony from people who were at Park East that evening, from students in high school, basically just pleading and saying, guys, we just want to feel safe walking into synagogue. We just want to feel safe walking into church. And you're absolutely right, Reverend. It's kind of a sign of the times that we even need to legislate at this level. But here's where we are, and we need to meet the moment.
You know, it's interesting because you brought up Westboro Baptist Church. You and I were in conversation about that. We were even prepared because we were on the list. They wanted to protest us as well. And we're talking about a church, a small church that's in Topeka, Kansas, and coming to New York. which it shows how New York is at the forefront of people's minds when it comes to social issues, because we have tackled so many of them here in New York, especially in New York City. We've had security in our church from the early 90s. Because I've spoken out on certain issues, my relationship with the Jewish community, I've had some conflicts with the Muslim community on it. We've had, bomb threats and all of that. That is, kind of settled down because we have a reputation for our security operations. But at one time, houses of worship felt that this was somehow against their faith if you did something like that. How do you respond to that, Hindi?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, when we go into synagogue now every Saturday with my kids, we all get checked. All of our bags get checked, and they know me. All I ever have in that bag is just snacks for the kids so they don't get bored in synagogue services. But we have to go through it each time, and we welcome it because we know that it's necessary. I mean, I'll never forget standing in synagogue on the morning of October 7th. The rabbi got to the pulpit, and he said, "I have some terrible news." He told us what happened, and my first instinct, and I ran out of the synagogue and I locked the door, because we know that when something happens against the Jewish community anywhere, it affects all of us. And I know this weekend many of us are on edge a little bit. I'm wondering if there will be some kind of war between the U.S. and Iran, or Israel and Iran. And once again, my mind goes to the synagogues. Yeah. Keep those doors locked. Keep us safe.
We're going to take a break right here. I just want to give you a biblical reference, Rev. If you look when the commandments were given, there was a buffer zone. The people stood at a distance. It was an intense moment, and the people had to move back. They stood at a distance. That's the first buffer zone in the history of civilization.
Beautiful.
Right? I'm going to have to dig into that text now and understand the context. Right? Yeah. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
At Manhattan University, a graduate degree is not out of reach. You'll gain real-world skills, credentials employers value, and connections to New York City's top companies. Choose from their new Master of Science degrees in healthcare informatics, digital marketing and analytics, business analytics, or financial analytics, all built around hands-on learning and industry partnerships. Graduate ready to lead, not just work. Take the next step at manhattan.edu/graduate. Manhattan University. Lead the future.
LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I filed my return,
but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Your Wish is Your Command is being called the greatest success book of all time, with over 100,000 5-star reviews.
I went from $5K on my bank account to $8 million.
My income doubled.
I was able to retire at the age of 31.
It reveals the missing key to the law of attraction. Your Wish is Your Command is now available on Amazon. Search Your Wish is Your Command on Amazon to get your copy today.
The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard. You're listening to the Rev and the Rabbi and our guest. Let me pose the question, because, the governor has a bill and we don't want to disrupt the process of that. But does this extend beyond just houses of worship? Are we talking about religious schools and other organizations, Hindi?
It's a great question. So currently the city bill speaks about schools in addition to houses of worship, and it also talks about buildings that have educational programs. So think about JCCs or Ys that have early childhood programs. And the reason why this is so important, some people might be thinking, well, why does the JCC need this? What's happening in front of a Y? Well, I can tell you about a couple weeks ago, I was at 92nd Street Y, and we were there for a lecture. The lecture was called The Future of, the State of American Jewry, with New York Times columnist Bret Stephens. While we're inside listening to the lecture, we start hearing sounds of a protest. Lecture ends, I walk out, and we literally had to be protected by security because the protesters were so out of control, literally screaming in our faces. And all we had done was attend a lecture on the state of American Jewry. So the sad fact of the matter is that it's not just houses of worship that are experiencing this. It's schools and it's cultural institutions. And it is not only when it's a conversation about Israel. That's also a total misconception. Bret Stephens was talking to us about the state of American Jewry. What are they protesting in that instance? What is the motivation of the protesters? And the sad truth is we need this bill to protect schools and cultural institutions as well, because the protesters are showing up and intimidating people at all kinds of places.
You know, it was interesting. Deacon Kevin McCormick was one of the presenters at the press conference, and he's the superintendent of Catholic schools in the diocese, of Brooklyn. And he said, look, they protest you, they can protest us. This bill is important for all of us. And Hindi, one of the things that I found so heartening was when you and I had spoken about getting non-Jewish participation. It was the easiest thing ever. There was every representative.
Everyone said yes.
Everyone said yes. You know what?
And we had many people from the Muslim community. The imams were there. It was really powerful.
Yeah, which also speaks to the closeness we enjoy as an interfaith network. I think back, Rev, you and I know that there have been times St. Patrick's was defaced. There were mosques in Brooklyn that were defaced. Synagogues have been defaced. And we all came together. It wasn't as if the Jews were only speaking out on behalf of the Jews or, Catholics on behalf of Catholics. We all stood together to say this is an affront to all of us. So I think we don't want to see these things, but what we do want to see is that strong bond that we've created over the years. And thank God we have it with police, with it's like the rapid religious response.
No, it's true. We've developed that capacity. We've built that muscle. And you see that they know each other. The faith leaders recognize each other. They're hugging. I mean, before the press conference, it was like a 30-minute schmooze session with all the faith leaders just being so happy to be together and see each other again.
And to see non-Jews schmooze is something that I've always wanted. I always see Jews schmoozing, but non-Jews schmoozing, something new. Rev, go ahead.
I think we've modeled that in the Northeast. We've had to. New York City is the most religiously diverse city in the world, I would say, definitely in the United States. And we've modeled that type of cooperation because we understand that there are shared values that we want to protect within our city. And so we model it across the country. People watch. I mean, New York, look, why is the election of a mayor in New York City drawing the attention of the whole nation?
Right.
Why is that? It's because whatever happens in New York City tends to be a prophetic signal of the nation itself. And that's why we have a greater responsibility as religious leaders, because we bring that moral value consensus to our society.
I remember when the Pope said New York City is the capital of the world. He didn't mention Albany.
Right.
But he said New York City is the capital of the world.
No, it's 100% true. And by the way, when there were pictures of violent protesters, engaging in intimidation in front of a house of worship, it's a stain on the city's image. And, one of the things that we spoke about in the hearing is New York is actually the place. We know I grew up in Montreal in Canada, and whenever we would come visit New York, it was like we were coming home, right? And my dad would always say, like, look at the yarmulkes on the street. We're not used to that. And New York was a place where Jews were often... we often felt the safest to be most ourselves, right? No need to put on the baseball cap. You don't even have to bring kosher food to Yankee Stadium because they had kosher hot dogs, right? All of those things that might seem silly, but they created a sense of like, we belong here. And when you see those images, that infringes on people's sense of belonging, and that's what we really want to protect against.
Yeah. Well, Hindi, we have about 3 minutes left for the segment with you. This is Hindi Pukpko, Senior Vice President of UJA-Federation. Talk about UJA. I think people hear the letters, they hear some of the things, but I don't think many people or enough people understand the breadth and depth of the work that this organization does.
I appreciate that opportunity. The truth is I feel honored to go to work every day. The mission of UJA is to ensure the well-being of all New Yorkers of every background and to help advance the Jewish communities of New York. And we're able to do that because we have a strong community-based campaign where every year we raise lots of money and then we give that money away. And I think the unique role that UJA inhabits of really being the largest philanthropic supporter of social safety net services for all New Yorkers, alongside our commitment to the Jewish community, puts us in a very special place in the city where we can say with credibility and integrity that we really do care about this city and all of its residents. We care about safety for everyone. And thankfully, our philanthropy and our grant making enables us to do that in very powerful ways.
And it's challenged also because there are maybe individuals who disagree with what you support and what you stand for. And yet you have to navigate those things carefully, especially in New York City. How do you respond to that?
Oh, yes. We are no strangers to disagreement, whether within our own community or beyond our community. You know, we typically joke that if people on the far left and far right are mad at us, it probably means we're doing something right. Right? So if you only have detractors on one side, you know, maybe there's a problem. But generally speaking, you know, I wake up every day and I really try to intuit what our donors want from us, what do most people want from us, what do most New Yorkers believe, and that's our job. And as long as we stay there, we're doing the right thing. That doesn't mean people won't yell at us, complain to me. That's sort of part of the job, and we want to hear from people. But I think we know that we're doing the right thing when we hear from the fringes on both sides. That means we've probably found the right track to be on.
I got to tell you something funny. There was a protest in front of UJA some years ago. I don't remember the issue, but during the protest, one of the protesters went to the front of the building and said, "Can I use the restroom?" You know, so even though he was protesting UJA, he needed UJA.
Yes.
You know, Hindi, we've come to the end of the segment, and I just want to say this, that, you know, there's a statement in the Bible to Abraham, go out and be a blessing. Wherever you go, be a blessing. Hindi Pukpko, I can tell you that those of us privileged to know you, work with you, recognize you as a great blessing to all communities. And UJA, I know, feels very, very fortunate to have you. And we're very, very fortunate to have you as a colleague, as a friend, and as someone who is there who shows up for people of different backgrounds and beliefs. And before you go, Hindi, make sure you put Reverend A.R. Bernard's name on the list at UJA for all of the mailings that go out. And Rev, there isn't a virus in the world that's going to get you off that list. Let me tell you right now.
That is true.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And stay tuned for more of The Rev and the Rabbi. We'll be right back.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hey, Sal.
Hank, what's going on? We haven't worked a case in years.
I just bought my car at Carvana, and it was so easy. Too easy.
Think something's up?
You tell me. They got thousands of options. Found a great car at a great price. And it got delivered the next day.
It sounds like Carvana just makes it easy to buy your car, Hank.
Yeah, you're right. Case closed.
Buy your car today on
Carvana.
Delivery fees may apply.
The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
You know, I thought it was a fascinating conversation with Hindi. First of all, she's probably the youngest senior vice president of a not-for-profit that I've ever met. And to see someone so young, imbued with such enthusiasm for what she does, is good because, you want to show that, look, our young people are supporting the cause. And what better way than to have a young person leading the charge? So she does a great job. And look, I remember her. I went to school with members of her family when I was in college, and I know her dad. It just shows you the DNA. Look at your family. Look how you passed on that, that giving, that commitment to a cause from generation to generation.
You say that. My grandchildren speak among themselves in terms of their responsibility because of the Bernard name. And, I have one young lady, she's my granddaughter, she's about to graduate from law school. And, she is conscious that she carries a certain responsibility and respectability, but they see their work as ministry. My grandson, MTA, we talk about the encounters that he has, whether he is posted at, Jamaica Station or Penn Station or Grand Central Station, and he builds relationships. And that building a relationship allows him to do more effective policing. So he looks at people, the homeless that he has to interact with, et cetera, people who can be belligerent, et cetera. And he sees it as an opportunity for ministry. Still has to do his job, he has to go according to the law, et cetera. But it's amazing how they all see, no matter what profession they're in, they see it as ministry.
I recall talking with a Holocaust survivor who's getting older, as so many are. And he said to me, who's going to remember our legacy after we're gone? Who's going to speak out for us? Who's going to continue what we tried to remind the people of that happened some years ago? And I think it's a question that all of us, who have families say, will we be remembered in a way that continues all of we've imbued them with, all of the values that we've imbued them with? And so it's very, very important. Do you see the relationship sometimes between grandparents and grandchildren? And I don't think why. What is so special about that relationship? Some used to say they have a common enemy, the parents. But but you see, and I think the answer is, I would give this example. I remember walking by a playground one day, and I saw a dad pushing a swing with his child on it with one hand. With the other hand, he was on the cell phone. And I thought to myself, you would never see a grandparent doing that, because nothing is more important at that moment than to spend this time, meaningful time, with someone who means so much to you. So I think one of the reasons it's so special is that special attention that's given by grandparents to grandchildren.
On the other, so the flip side of that is the grandparent has had time to really evolve in life, to mature in life, to broaden their perspective when it comes to what's important and what's not important. My kids say to me, why, you never let us get away with what you let my nieces and nephews, your grandchildren, get away with. And there's a degree of truth to that, because I so wanted to do the right thing with my children, and I was still learning. I was still growing. It's not like my wife and I took a course in college, on raising children. You have that pass from one generation to another. You try to not make the mistakes of the past generation, but you're learning as you're going. So when you become a grandparent, it's a different perspective, and you're really at a place where the things that were critically important, you realize they're not as important as they were, that we thought they were. I had, and I've shared this maybe one or two times over the past few years, we have a Christmas meeting, Christmas Eve. My family gets together at my home, all of us, all 50 of them. And we talk about the year past, we pray together, right? And allow them an opportunity to share, what the year was like. And I remember this one evening, and I said to my grandchildren, I said, listen, your parents are still under construction. They didn't arrive. In fact, they had you before they actually became fully mature in parenting. So you got to give them a little slack. I cannot tell you how many times they've come back to me and thanked me for saying that, because it brought a realization to them that they didn't have. They expected their parents were parents and knew everything about everything, and they realized it wasn't like that.
I remember someone years ago wrote an article, and he said, I wrote an article entitled The 10 Commandments in Raising Children. And then I had a child. And I changed the article to The 10 Suggestions in Raising Children. Then I had another child, and I stopped writing articles because I realized that, there's no one way to raise a child, and not everything we say works well. You have to have, a plan B in addition to plan A. But one of the things I have learned is I spoke to my son one day, and I said, what do you remember in growing up? What were the best times we spent together? And I thought he was going to say we traveled here, went to this faraway place, or did some sporting event. He said, Dad, the truth, when we sat in the car on the way to something, for example, when you're clergy, you take your kid to the wedding or to the funeral because you want to, be with them. He said, those moments in the car when we spoke to each other, I cherish the most. The time spent in. I know we often look for things. What are we going to buy them, and where are we going to take them? And that's nice. But ultimately, it's the quality of time spent.
Rabbi, I will tell you, at Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas dinners, gatherings, they do not speak mostly about the toys they got for Christmas. They spoke about the experiences they had, the memories that were created. They talk about when we went camping, when we went to a theme park, when we went to dinner, when we did that, and you remember what happened. And this is what they talk about. So our job is to give them memories that they cherish for the rest of their life and pass on. In fact, I point out now when we do something together, I said, this is going to be a memory. You're going to tell your children about this. And I'm talking about grandchildren telling my great-grandchildren, their children this. And that is really what we need to do. Give memories that they cherish.
So are you advocating for parents not to give kids gifts for Christmas and Hanukkah?
I will tell you,
at the end of the day, that's not what matters.
We have cut back on our gift giving, except my wife. I'm still praying for her. She's just the little ones. We have young grandchildren, and she feels that she needs to shower them. I said, "Are you making up for when you were a kid?" She said, "Probably, but I'm having fun."
Years ago, I remember reading about the ethical will, where parents would write these wills to their kids. I remember one son was becoming a doctor, and the dad said, when a poor person comes to you for treatment, don't charge the person. Do it for nothing. Do it because it's the right thing to do. But they would, write their ethics and values into that was the will, not how much you left them, but how many values did you leave them?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. We impart. Legacy is more than material inheritance that you leave behind. There's a wonderful passage in Proverbs that says a good man, a righteous man, leaves an inheritance to his children's children.
Yeah.
Number one, he understands that what he does affects a generation not even born yet. That it's not just his children, but it goes to another generation. He gives them, the most important thing in my mind is spirituality. An understanding that you're part of something much greater, this vast universe, that there is meaning, that there's purpose. This is what faith is all about and why it's so important. It gives us a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, identity and dignity, helps us understand how we should live in this world. Those things are very important. I think, Rabbi, when we fail to give that, all right, when we fail to give that definitively, we leave them open to all the crazy stuff that's out there that robs them of values and standards.
That's why buying them things sometimes interferes with that transmission of values. When they got to have the latest, and you have the cell phone and the computer, And how many times do you see people looking down instead of looking across at the individual?
Yeah.
Right?
We become consumers, consumer-driven.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. So we got to take a break, but when we come back, I'd like to explore that whole idea of standards and values. What do you say? Yes?
I think we should talk about, and I want to talk about respect, because I think it's something that people hear about and don't see enough about. Okay.
Sounds good. So stay tuned for more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Greenlight helps kids learn about money by actually using it. It's a debit card and money app that teaches kids to earn, save, and spend in real life, not just swipe and hope for the best. Learning happens naturally, in the moment. Parents can set limits, see real-time spending, and guide better habits all in one place, without constant check-ins or cash runs. Don't wait. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/trygreenlight.
If you're chasing data down instead of seeing it in one place, you need the Intuit ERP. Intuit Enterprise Suite. All your data in one place with built-in AI for real-time insights. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
And I want to say thank you again to our producer, Elias Raff, who on a religious basis, week after week, is with us. And it makes this show possible. And thank you to all the listeners who around the country who make it a priority, because we get comments from people in so many different places. I listened, I learned, I disagree. But what's interesting is, for the most part, even when people disagree, they do it respectfully. And I use the word respect because I think we're seeing a respect shortage in our world. I think
you and I were there were boundaries of respect that we didn't cross out of respect, whether it was houses of worship, our parents, our neighbors, adults even. Person was an adult, you were taught to respect them because they were an adult. We're at a place where respect is lost, and a loss of respect, Rabbi, is the number one cause for divorce in our society. Not even money, not even inequity or anything. It's a loss of respect. And when a couple no longer respects each other, the relationship is doomed. That's real, Rabbi.
You can't have a relationship that is missing respect. It's not a relationship anymore. It just disintegrates. It becomes something very often vulgar, vile. Look, I just want to refer to the State of the Union address. There you have it at the Capitol. No, but I know I saw the yelling back and forth, the deprecation of the other, whoever the other was. A member of Congress wearing a pin. There was really, the language was vulgar on the pin. And you're a member of Congress and you're walking in, you're wearing such a pin. When would you ever have that? And putting down people because they disagree has become popular in many circles on both sides. And people on social media who say some of the most horrific things. I saw someone who was insulting the Supreme Court on a social media post. And I thought to myself, you wouldn't even understand an opinion of the Supreme Court, let alone putting people down. And yet you present yourself as someone who really knows what's going on. And, I was looking at some of the backgrounds of the Supreme Court members. Amy Coney Barrett, she's brilliant at law school. has a child with Down syndrome. Adopted a child
of color. Yeah.
I mean, just really a person, an exemplary human being. And I think what unfortunately has happened is what Moynihan talked about, the dumbing down. We have this moral dumbing down where you say expectations are lowered. We say it's okay because we don't expect more. That's a sad development.
See, there you go. Expectations. See, you know what it is, Rabbi? Loss of respect is one of the most underestimated forces in social decline because respect functions as social gravity. It holds relationships together, institutions together, authority structures. All of that comes into play. And when we lose respect, those relationships begin to fall apart. The institutions begin to fall apart. What we saw at the State of the Union, all right, were leaders of institutions and the institution that governs this country. And if they're not carrying themselves respectful, what happens? Because authority loses moral legitimacy, as far as I'm concerned, when there's a loss of respect.
How do you blame young people? How do we blame young people if the role models or the supposed role models are not presenting the image they should? If they don't, you don't just teach honesty, you have to see honesty. You don't just teach morality, you have to see morality. And I think that they're not seeing what they need to see.
Look, and if you're in a leadership position, you have to rely on power instead of influence. There should be personal influence that comes from respect. And another thing that happens, Rabbi, rules multiply in a society because trust declines.
Yeah.
So what do? We codify. We legislate. And it creates a very hardened society.
Look, we had a discussion today with Hindi Pukpko. Who would have thought years ago that you'd have to have codification of rules to keep protesters away? The fact that you have protesters near a house of worship trying to interfere, unheard of. Walk by churches and synagogues and mosques and you have police cars there, or you have to hire private security there. What happened? Where are we? If that that's become the norm. And if, I know leaders of congregations who have been faulted, well, you're not providing enough security. You're not doing enough to protect us. And people are afraid. Some people are afraid to go. They say, I'm not going, I'm not taking a chance. Where are we? What's happened?
You and I talk about civility and conversation, right? Being able to disagree without being disagreeable. Well, respect allows disagreement without dehumanization. You should be able to have a conversation respectfully without dehumanizing or demonizing each other. But we've seen so much of that in the past 10 years in our society. And it's a sad thing, but it's leading in a direction that it's going to take time for us to recover from. Because when respect is removed, disrespect is normalized.
We
in language and expectations, you name it.
We have a holiday coming up in the Jewish calendar, Purim, and it speaks about Haman who sought to destroy the Jewish people, and we make noise. Although I got to say this, and I'm ashamed to say this, I think in some quarters Haman would be cheered today. I think there were those who would say, don't protest Haman. He's doing the right thing. He's killing Jews, But, and what I see often happens is that we have the reading of the Megillah, the story of Purim, which happened during the Persian Empire. And whenever Haman's name is mentioned in the reading, you make noise. And young people very often, they love making the noise when Haman's name is heard. And then you have some of the other people saying, shh, shh. They try to quiet them down. And I always think to myself, you're doing the wrong thing. What do you tell them to quiet down when they're protesting evil? They're doing the right thing. Don't be a shusher. I understand decorum, but something here overrides that. And that is the need to speak out, to speak against those who are hate mongers. And unfortunately today there's a proliferation of hate. Look at the numbers. Look at the hate crimes that have been perpetrated against different groups. Jews, off the charts, right? the percentages are so high and unwarranted to have this kind of vitriol against, people who just want to live with and, they want to fulfill their traditions. They want to go to synagogue and church, whatever. They want to just be who they are.
Drawing from one of the Hebrew prophets, Isaiah, when he was bringing judgment against the leadership in Israel. And it was in Isaiah 5, and he says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet." It's an inversion of values. It's exchanging in such a way that we lose our moral compass. And unfortunately, and I don't want to, because we give hope. We're about hope and good things. And I don't want to say that, it's all going to collapse, but it's a wake-up call. The prophet analyzed the spiritual, moral, social, political, and even economic conditions of the times and spoke a word from God. And that word was designed to elevate people, like you say, call them to holiness, to stand up higher, right? And that's why we need the prophetic voice that comes from leaders, moral leaders, such as yourself and myself and others.
And that's why when parents are sending kids to school, they need to see schools that try to inculcate young people with those noble values and virtues. We've often spoke about the past and how educated, cultured people were involved in the perpetration of the Holocaust. They built the death camps. They passed the Nuremberg laws. They were educated. They had all kinds of degrees, but they didn't have decency. So when you have schools, you need curricula that are replete with values as well. And, I know the separation, but there are values that really can hold communities together. We can all subscribe to those values, and we need to do that.
Teddy Roosevelt said, to educate a man in mind and not in morals is to educate a menace to society. Yeah. How true is that then? And how true is it now?
Rev, thank you.
It's been a pleasure, as always. And thank you, our listeners, for joining us right here every Sunday morning for your weekly dose of the Rev
and the Rabbi.
Till next time, shalom.
Thanks for listening to the Rev and the Rabbi. You can hear the Rev and the Rabbi Sunday mornings at 7. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our country has to offer, especially health care. Across every state, every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.